and then the fear of missing out is functioning as a weird motivation for people to just start act more. And this is a case where I would almost say something called the late movers advantage or second mover advantage. There are a lot of investors are asking, like, you have to be an AI company now, otherwise you wouldn't be able to raise the next round of funding. So there is some business decisions made not primarily trying to make the users happy or finding out what the users want.
Hi everyone, welcome back to Beyond the Algorithms. This is Frost.
Hi everyone, this is June.
Yeah, so June, recently, or I should say recently, for the last couple of years, almost every week, I have different friends in different industries just ping me every week or so asking, hey Frost, what's new in AI? What's new in San Francisco? What's trending? What should I implement in my company? And the eagerness and the fear of missing out is something I've never seen in my career during this time. Have you seen the same thing?
Yeah, no, it's funny you mentioned this. Literally yesterday, I got another one. It's like, what is the newest tools of AI for this particular use case or that? Yeah, it's a constant theme. I think fear of missing out is definitely a main fear serving as a motivation for this. But probably more importantly, it's not even like missing out. It's like fear of like something is going to just some new AI application or new thing that we've never seen is going to completely take over the industry, the company, or like we're just going to be end up bankrupting very soon because something that we did not see it coming. So like the fear is definitely factor that is making people anxious.
Yeah, do you have some examples that you were just like, wait, what? Why is that even relevant to you to begin with?
The Allbirds now is an AI company and their stock price has jumped, 400% or 700%. I forgot exactly. Like, it makes no sense for for a shoe company to become an AI infrastructure company, but that's what they did. That's what they're telling people, and the market is reacting to it, almost rewarding this type of behavior that makes other people even worried further, because maybe I should be someone who sell computing power or buy GPUs or whatever, because other people seem to have successes.
Yeah, I think that one is a really far-fetched thing, but I can offer a couple examples. So there are more and more companies offer AI consultations. So for example, when you go to a salon even, you can talk to them and they'll recommend you different kind of services, different pricing tags and everything that'll be good for you. And then they book the service for you. It kind of makes sense when you're actually booking a hair salon appointment, because at the end, you're going to go there and you're going to get your hair cut, right? And there are like 5 services in total for you to do that. But when I started seeing a sushi restaurant, I usually order with this AI agent for me to talk about like what kind of sushi I can order on their website. I was just like, no, I know I want a salmon, I want a tuna. I don't really need to talk to an AI agent about this. I almost felt like, are we thinking about users are going to become 10 times more demanding for personalized consultation? Or we are just imagining everyone has to offer this for a user behavior that will just never be created because we simply don't need this. We simply don't want this to begin with.
I've seen my share of similar behavior too, but I think it's not a surprise in a sense that we haven't really seen these type of like major shift in how even society functions before. Like this generation of AI is truly disruptive in so many different ways, and we don't really know how to react to it. It's almost like, we can do budget forecasting, we can do, cost estimating, we can do demand forecasting or whatever that we do. All of those are out of the window, and whoever is trying to give you a 5-year forecast on what can happen for anything that AI is going to impacting is fooling themselves. So I think people are reacting to this because this is like so new, and we don't have any almost like in recent memory of historical reference that can be used as a benchmark to guide us through how do we do this. And then the fear of missing out is functioning as a weird motivation for people to just start act more. And this is a case where I would almost say strategy, there is something called a late mover's advantage or a second mover advantage, right? You can just see what other people are doing and then wait and then see if there is anything that you can copy so that you don't really have to bear the upfront cost or the exploration cost. This may be a time for us to start to think more from that angle. Instead of always being the cutting edge and the FOMO, we can enjoy a little bit of sitting there, observe what is working, and then instead of FOMO, we can talk about JOMO, the joy of missing out, and then see if there is an opportunity when it becomes real versus imagining people are going to all of a sudden order their, sushi from ChatGPT.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that also brings up a very interesting point that how do we evaluate the projects that we know historically that will always give us a good outcome? Let's say Google Maps listing optimization for restaurants versus these new shiny AI features. When especially the latter ones, we don't really know how good it will be, but at the same time, definitely people don't want to miss out the opportunities. So how do you think companies should evaluate these kind of projects together? Because they still have limited resources and attention span, despite they might be slightly more efficient with the new AI tools.
That's such a big topic. There's so many things that we can talk about. I think to start, where I've seen more successes in AI adoption is where you have a very tangible outcome. And then the more shorter term the feedback loop is, the easier it is to convince your CFOs to actually allocate resources to do this. So at least in the past year and a half-ish, the easiest one is if you can somehow save money, right? Save costs. And that's why we talked last time, the layoff waves of, if you can make a case saying, if we now use AI, we need less people, and then we instantly see the result, then cost cutting is an easy one that people have successes. On the other hand, the revenue generating piece, it's hard because we don't really know what the users or customers' behavior is going to change. The reason why the larger companies are benefiting from this is because ultimately they still have control over the eyeballs, right? The whole eyeball economy, social media, or you mentioned Google Maps. Google Maps is still my default place to go whenever I'm trying to navigate things, and then that behavior is not going to change anytime soon. And if your business still rely on Google Maps, for example, for traffic, then it is more important for you to think about where can we invest in increasing that kind of access. Of course, there are going to be monopolies in a market where traffic is still where the traffic is. It's not going to change instantly, but if there is any major trend that is actually real, then maybe that's the opportunity. For example, some time ago, what was the company's name? The AI search. Perplexity was supposed to be the Google killer, right? People are supposed to just go to Perplexity to searches instead of Google to search. And at one point, they were valued really, really high. I think they're still doing well, but I think the fundamental behavioral shift that people were advertising for, that now you go to a different place to sort of start your research journey, has not panned out, and Google reacted very well. Now you have Gemini, even the Google searches today automatically give you AI search thing on top for some of the queries. So if you think the behavioral change is real, you need to really find out if the traffic source has changed. And if that has not really changed, then it does not really make sense for us to all of a sudden building a Perplexity plugin or a agentic commerce with ChatGPT, because we believe now people are changing their shopping behavior instead of from whatever the traditional sources are into a more agentic-based behavior. And I think that's partly, I assume, the reason why OpenAI is not heavily pushing that anymore, because after all, the consumer's behavior has not changed. So, cost cutting is easy one. Revenue generating, you have to follow the money, right? Follow the traffic, follow the sources of customers' behavioral change. But it's easy to say. I don't really know if there is anything that we need to do. And that's why I'm saying, unless you are in the technology field, you are in the business, maybe it's actually more beneficial to take a little bit of a JOMO approach, enjoy the missing out of the first iteration of things and then try to take advantage of the second or late movers advantage.
Yeah, I think you also bring out the interesting point of Google search actually had their market share to be below 90% the first time for many, many years recently. But after all, it's still 90%. It's no longer 95%, but still 90%. The 5% drop definitely moved to AI tools, different portals, and would call them early adopters. So I guess the real question to the merchants or different companies is, would you consider your target audience, the early adopters, in all these technology waves? Say you are setting a cybersecurity tool, maybe all your customers are the early adopters. They start using AI to do research, so the AI optimization becomes even more important to you than anything else. But if you're selling just like some delicious pastry at a mom and pop shop, I don't know if your customers are that tech driven. They
Yeah.
are likely to be mainstream or even late adopters. So you can wait a little bit there to see how the trend goes, or maybe there will be automatic toolkit for you when it goes all the way to the late adopter stage for this new technology.
I so much agree. I think there is a marketing buzz or a branding side of things. Maybe people want to be perceived as, oh, I'm buying the newest technology, but there is a real business implications. I remember it was last year I was car shopping and then I was in one of the car dealer websites and they have a whole chatbot ready to sort of chat with me. I was like, okay, I'll try this. It was a very bad experience. The chatbot doesn't even know their own inventory. I have to search and go back and tell the chatbot, like, this is actually on your website. It's like, how about this car? In my database, there's no such car. I think the adoption was done in such a hurry way with almost a sole objective being we can say now we have AI.
Yeah, instead of serving customers better, in your opinion.
Yeah, I think those are the cases where I think waiting a little bit later is actually better. And the parallelly, I think same thing is happening in software engineering as well. Things are just happening so fast. I saw a semi-joke the other day. It's like one of the main advantage of being a technology person in this day and age is to learn slow. Because if you learn very slowly, by the time you realize this thing needs to be learned, you don't have to learn that anymore. We moved on. We have a new tool. So you're actually better off waiting until you actually find that the tool actually is worth spending time on. Otherwise, you're always chasing. And by the time you have found the things that you want to work on, something else has to replace that already. I think with just how fast things are moving on, for the set of audiences who are business-wise are not on the cutting edge itself, being a little bit more conservative, there's nothing wrong with it.
Yeah, I also feel sometimes it's always good to be adapting the base models and the newest technologies for the base performance. But for the consumer-facing features, it's important to be stable. That's why we always have the lab version and the production version. And in the era of AI, I saw a lot of companies started blending the line. And I think, June, your story was a really good reminder, right? Have your lab version still in development, doing all the cutting edge cool stuff. But when it's consumer facing, it has to tell me the inventories, even if it's just a SQL query and nothing AI about it. You have to tell me the features of the cars. What's the pricing? What is the promotion? Maybe something very, very rule based, but it's something that can actually serve the customers to begin with. Yeah. Before we move the lab version to production.
Yeah, we're living in bleeding edge now. Like everything is bleeding blood, and it's actually not, in a lot of cases, productive besides the marketing buzz. Again, the FOMO aspect of it is like we have to be perceived, and then maybe the board is going to be asking us to do this, or my boss asked me to do this. But the reality is you have to find out like where to invest. And this is probably, we can sort of pivot a little bit into the reality is we still have to decide like where to invest and how to adapt. And then sitting there doing nothing is, although I was saying about the late mover advantage, you still have to move somehow. What's your advice or what you've seen in the market on a more practical advice on how should we react to this AI thing that we've never seen before?
I would say it's the same advice as any new technology. Let's think about what is your goal first. Instead of we just have to adapt to this new technology. The goal shouldn't be let's take a zoom out, right? The goal before would never be, oh, let's use this cool new software called Salesforce. Like 20 years ago, it was like, okay, let me optimize my sales pipeline. And then you find out what software actually serves your needs, and you started using this software. And I feel now people are a little bit reversed a little bit because people are almost too eager. So I'll give you an example. If I were a sushi restaurant, my goal is to increase the conversion rate when users hit the menu to they actually order. And I'll say the biggest thing AI can do for you is probably you remember what people have ordered and automatically sort out your menu items. So put the most popular ones on the top and the not so popular ones on the bottom and add some seasonal items. And you have to only do this resorting once per week. Or if you want to be aggressive, once other day. And that's probably better than having this agent. You save a lot of tokens and you have a much higher conversion rate. And you still use the technology because this sushi restaurant definitely cannot afford having an engineer to write the sorting algorithm. But now they can use AI to do it. That would just be an example I think of.
Yeah, I think that's a great example. And then this is probably a word to all the senior decision makers of the organizations. I think when people are talking about like AI adoption, a lot of times the very strong preference is the customer need to see it, right? If they see a chatbot, if they see an agent, if they see like we're actually using AI, then we feel cool. But the adoption can be in places where it's not that directly visible. Like you were saying, like it can be a rule base, it can be a database search to find out what are the popular items and what are the seasonal items. And those are not like using actual large language model tokens to actually find out. There are a lot of traditional methods to do it. But the way of building this, now we can use, AI-powered code generation tool to actually build those, let's quote unquote, traditional software, and you can move a lot faster than before. It does not really help you to sort of tell a brand marketing story around like we are the cool AI company who have agents on our website anymore, but you can actually move a lot faster with a lower cost, have higher control of the processes, and also be able to measure the result, right? You actually have more direct visibility into the user's behavior if you actually do this, regardless of whether you use large language models, AI agents, AI to do it. There are less directly visible ways to actually take advantage of the technology available.
Absolutely. I also want to just quote specifically what you said. A lot of companies' goal is just to make users see the fact that AI agent. And I want to get everyone to ask themselves a question. Do your users really care about that? Again, it depends on what kind of users you have. If you are a top cybersecurity company, maybe your users do care. You have cutting edge AI agent on your website. But if you are, for example, company that sells furnitures, do your users really care about that? They are buying a $5,000 dining table. They deserve to have a call with someone just to feel good about this. And that person probably costs you a lot less than the tokens to begin with and having a much higher conversion rate, right? Like, do your users actually really prefer this experience? It's really, I would say, the fundamental of consumer-facing products. Understand your users and really serve their needs in a way.
I'll make that a little bit further. It also depends on what kind of company you are, and then also depending on the stage, what your investors want. I think that's probably where things in Silicon Valley become a little bit thrown out of proportion. There are a lot of investors are asking, like, you have to be an AI company now, otherwise you wouldn't be able to raise the next round of funding. So there is some business decisions made not primarily trying to make the users happy or finding out what the users want, but more about the investor community, maybe your board actually want you to do things that's not directly serving your users, but help you tell a better story for the next round of fundraising. Reservations on that point of view, but it's another stakeholder, right? Users and investors and board and managers and employees are all stakeholders in this game.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for pointing that out for also different kind of investors. Right. But I think truthfully for investors, board members, execs, advisors, also maybe it makes sense for them to think about what does AI application really mean for the company when they are thinking about why this is good. So they can also direct the efforts of AI into an area that actually makes sense for the company at the moment. So I will use the menu example again. So for any normal retail restaurants, they will not be able to do it before, but now they can download their sales data from their integration, they say open table or whatever they use, upload to any of these AI platform and just say, hey, regenerate the entire page for me. And they can copy and paste the entire page onto their menu page, maybe a WordPress, or I'm not even sure what it is. One click and this is done. And someone who's not an engineer. And that's a beautiful way of using it. And all it costs is $20 subscription fee per month. And this is using AI.
I agree, and that's why I had a reaction to your earlier comments on, like, tokens may be more expensive than humans. In this particular case, tokens are much cheaper than humans, and we just now have more opportunities to write software that maybe eventually need to be maintained, but that's a whole separate conversation for another day.
Yeah, of course.
Oh, I also want to bring up the topic of how do we evaluate where to invest as a larger organization, because again, we cannot just not move at all, just sit there and waiting. I think unless you are like a government, public sector, even public sector are still making changes. So we cannot not move at all, but also we don't want to be keep jumping on the next Chinese newest thing to actually try and realize that's too bleeding edge, so many things that does not really work. Like not every company can afford to run on the lab version of the technology. So I think what it comes down to is, as almost always recommended, a portfolio-based approach, right? You have to decide like how much you invest in the core, how much you invest in keeping your existing users happy. In your earlier example for us, like Google still occupy 90% of the web traffic. Maybe, depending on your position and hypothesis, you see a future world where Google is 60% of the web traffic, but that is still your core. It's still more than 50% and still where a lot of tensions need to be spent on. On the other hand, like the newer things that's happening, we cannot afford to not do it at all. We can, wait until the bleeding edge getting sort of sharpened out a little bit, but we have to build almost a whole separate process to actually address these type of new problems, which is unknown, hard to estimate, hard to do forecast, both in demand and both in cost and impact, and very high risk. So like almost as an extension to the sort of lab version of the product, I almost would feel it makes sense for it to think about a lab version of an organization, where you have the core version of the organization and the investment strategy to actually focus on the things that are still making the most of the money, and one whole framework of decision making, and another side of the lab version of the investment portfolio where you can afford to make more mistakes, and if things doesn't really work out, we can scrape it very quickly and fail fast, fail often, fail early, but can do very many different things at the same time to sort of try to see whether any of the AI buzz turn out to be business impacting. And I'm sure there's one of them somewhere for the different businesses. It's just most of the businesses are not well positioned to take advantage of those because we either move too slow or our decision-making process require a higher level of clarity in terms of what the cost, what's the impact, and then we do a committee review by consensus. By that time, it's too late to take any actions.
Yeah, absolutely. I think I hate to say that cheesy word, but this is how we call it AI strategies or even the vision of where you see the company is moving towards to and where is your company's core competence right there. I want to give an example so it feels less lousy per se. So we all know about Taco Bell, and it's a free Asian company. There was actually a very good piece about how they adapt AI into their business model. So is there a vision of, well, we want to serve every customers better as of all our employees actually remember exactly what they want to eat. And they are able to use AI to achieve that. So when the customers are ordering, even like through drive-through, they just see exactly what they always like to order, and they can predict in this zip code or this kind of consumer profile what they would like to eat. They actually saw a great success in conversion rate, average order value, and sales spiking up, right? They didn't wait for McDonald's to implement this first, but their vision is we hope our staff can do that, but staff simply just cannot do that, right? But AI can do that
It's much
for
more
them,
human brain.
right? And then they decide to make a bet on that, which is a beautiful story. So I feel at the end, it's still like what you really try to achieve as a company that you couldn't do it before, like almost there because you just couldn't by technical limitations. Now is the time for you to play, to show your vision. Another really beautiful example is Walmart always talk about everyday low price, but truthfully, they couldn't really change your price tag every day. They couldn't really reflect on all the market ups and downs. Recently, they changed a lot of their stores' price tag to be digital, and they use AI to analyze what's the base price. It's good for them. They totally make more margin. They make better convergence, but it's also good for customers. Sometimes when the price eats a little bit, when they want to boost demand, they are able to lower the price much faster than before. And that serves their tagline from the beginning, everyday low price. Now the price is actually updated every day. So I think it's really just, especially big companies, it's so important to carry out the vision and the tagline, how you want to interact with your users instead of just trying to, because McDonald's, despite as close as they are to Taco Bell, they still have a very different fundamental personality, right? And that's how McDonald's is using the technology is totally differently in its own way, which is beautiful.
Yeah, I love the cliche you mentioned, the core competency, right? Each company need to find out like why do you deserve to have a space? How are you competing against customer? What is the competitive edge? And then somehow find a way to use the newest set of technology, AI is the current one, to amplify that differentiation.
Absolutely. Well, Joe, we covered a lot of things and we can never like talk enough about all these AI strategies. But if you were to give one advice to the high executives, as you just mentioned, to navigate these strategies, what would be your advice?
I would repeat what I said earlier, a portfolio-based investment approach. Move fast and conservative at the same time, just different part of the organization or different part of the investment tranches. How about you?
Yeah, absolutely. I would say look at your token bills. Just to echo what you said, I think a lot of people underestimate how expensive things can be when they think about automating certain features. And you may be surprised that AI is not cheaper in a lot of areas than humans.
Oh, absolutely agree. Absolutely agree.
Cool. Thank
Great.
you so much. I think that concluded our show today. I would like to just quote what June said today. Let's try to have the joy of missing out sometimes instead of fear of missing out.
Yeah, JOMO is the new motto. Thank you everyone for tuning in, and we'll see you next time.